Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mars Manifesto. And today I'm back with my buddy John, and we are talking about hunting. What men think about hunting women in the dating world and in relationships, how they perceive it, and what the difference is between women hunting and men hunting. Because there's sort of an interesting disconnect there that we'll get into. But let's start out by talking about the male perception of hunting, and I think it sort of dates back to cave dwelling. So we can start there. We'll just start at the very beginning with that, and go from there, because I think that's sort of a really important place to start. When we talk about a lot of our relationship stuff, we're talking about biology, and we're talking about sort of the DNA of men and what they're inclined to do, just as animals, basically. So when we talk about hunting, let's sort of put that primal instinct into play with what we deal with today.
I think a bit on biology. We've been doing just finished a documentary on actually on human sex trafficking, which has obviously nothing to do with this. But I worked with a very prominent OBGYN, someone that's done a lot of research on this, and as it relates to this hunting concept of a romance and finding a mate, and we know we're past the sort of the cave years of hitting someone over the head, that sort of stereotypical joke. But she made some good points, this doctor, and she said, in terms of biology, and we know this, but just we should remember that we're not really that far past it, right? So women have to protect their eggs. Their gestation period, their commitment to having kids is way, way different than for men. It's much more physical, and it's much more involved. But men have this obligation, this duty, and it's really just changed in the last 100 years to plant as many seeds as possible.
Yeah.
Because the mortality rate of infants, and so you really had to have this whole structure set up to have as many children as you could, so that we would survive. And so now we move along, and there's still this natural hunting thing that needs to happen with relationships, both before and once you're in the committed relationship, is so important.
Those are
And
so
hunting,
different too.
and they're different, but they're so critical, and I think that's where we break down.
Yeah.
So the hunting thing first is, women just naturally, I think, want to be hunted. Is this going to be the best man for me? How can he prove it? Because once he starts proving it to me, I'm really on the hook here for, I need him to protect me. I need him to do a lot of things.
And yeah.
I mean, and is this the best kind of, man for me? I mean, is he going to give me, what we're going to create together? Is it going to be an improved version? I mean, there's so much of that going on that's just processing that's innate. So, once you kind of get past that, did he hunt right? How did he hunt in some modern times?
Is he strong? Is he able? Is he smart? Yeah.
From the first time he approached me, what was he wearing? What did he say? And then how did he court me, right? How was it exciting, but at the same time, did I feel safe?
Right.
How has he evolved from the first time we met to the time that we're going to commit or have a kid? So there's all those pieces which are really important. But I think maybe what's even maybe more important is once you started to get into some form of a committed relationship. And here's where I think, and I'm going to put it on the men, I think that there's a lot of what doesn't happen. And so that fairy tale, that adventure, needs to continue within the committed relationship. Yeah. The flowers still need to happen. The spontaneity still needs to happen. He still needs to keep grooming himself. He still needs to have, wear nice. I mean, it doesn't stop. So men, I find, and women do it too, but I think men can get really complacent.
Yeah.
The adventure, the journey, the excitement still needs to happen. And she'll, I think, respond to you. Women, on the women's side, and I'll shut up and listen. On the women's side, I think, and what men complain about most, is women get lazy with sex.
Yeah.
And affection. They get lazy on that side. So it gets worse and worse. The worse the man gets with the things that he should be doing, which I just mentioned.
Right.
women start to get maybe a little less interested, and then she's not as interested, and then you start to get into this divide.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that adventure has to keep going.
Yeah. Do you think though that women tend to put in more long-term effort into maintaining that though? Like I know
Maintaining the relationship.
Again, we've talked about this before. I've been in several long-term relationships and a couple of marriages, and through those, as a woman, I've always tried to make it a point to make sure that my partner is taken care of, and that I maintain the house, and that that everything is maintained, including him, and that he's happy. Do men get bored with that? Do they get bored with the idea that something is always available and that they're always being taken care of? Do they want the challenge of having to sort of get it out of someone? Because I've heard a lot of men talk about how even if they're getting what they want, even if it's a great woman, she's smart, she's beautiful, she's talented, she takes care of everything, I get enough sex, all of his needs are being met, and he's still not happy, and he's bored, right? I've heard that. I'm just bored. This is not exciting anymore. How can a woman do anything to maintain that interest of a man, to make him feel like he's still able to hunt?
Let me ask you a question. This is not loaded. It's truly a question.
I like that you had to preface it.
Yeah, I mean, it really, really is a question. Let's just go, over the last 50 years, even less. It's so changed. How do we deal with the fact that if there are more available women out there, very close, on social media, down the street, at work, that because men are programmed to try to spread as many seeds as possible, we're just kind of completely going to biology. I'm not saying that it should be acted on at all, but that's what's going on. And it would be one thing if there wasn't as many available women.
It's crazy.
But it's just available.
And
everything's available.
It's like literally on your phone. You can swipe through 1,000 women or men and say, well, this one's better than the one I have, and this would be more interesting. I think online, it's been
new.
It's sort of the death of relationships in a lot of ways, because it creates so much distraction and so much availability that it makes what you have seem so mundane.
I mean, go back to the village. There was such a high price to pay for most men and women, if inappropriate.
If they left. Yeah.
Well, if they left, or they were having too much sex with the wrong people in their tribe, in their village. I mean, there were immediate consequences. Everyone knew what was going on.
There are no consequences now. There are none. I mean, and divorce is so fast anymore. I mean, if you don't have kids or assets together, you can get a divorce online in a couple of months. Yeah. And people have become, it seems, disposable in a way. And I mean, it makes me so sad to know that there are good men and good women who put everything that they can into a relationship, and it may never be enough anymore.
I think as a woman,
that's hard.
And I think it's hard as a woman. I think you have to really once you start getting comfortable with this person, and you can tell you're moving into a long-term committed relationship, I think that you have to, as best you can, discover, is this adventure together going to continue? Is this guy going to keep the adventure going? And I look at the healthy marriages of guys my age, and there have been problems.
There are always going to be problems.
Big problems
in relationships.
There've been big problems and small problems. I've had big problems and small problems. I'll just say one thing I've usually done is I've kept the adventure going. I mean, I love bringing flowers home. I like every now and again when I can afford it, I like buying a special gift.
Right.
Or, doing those things that are, part of the adventure, part of the romantic journey together. I really enjoy those.
So what drives a man to be motivated to do those things, though? I mean, if everything is seemingly going well on the outside, right? Looking at a relationship from the outside in is always very different from the inside out, because you don't share I didn't share all of my problems with everybody. And so, the death of one of my recent relationships was a surprise because, when you do hold everything inside and it looks great from the outside, it's a little deceiving. But what motivates a man to want to keep that going and keep things interesting when things seem to be going well?
I think too, and what motivates a man, this is not exactly what you're asking, but I think that many relationships just fail. They just don't last.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just knowing that, hey, this was fun while it lasted, or this was, I found out that this guy's really not the guy that's capable.
Mm-hmm.
And just going into relationships and knowing that they're kind of fluid and that most of them just don't make it long term. It's super tough to keep these like multi-year relationships going.
Yeah.
And just kind of go into it knowing that.
I think it's harder
gonna fail.
For women to go into relationships understanding that it may fail because we are so hardwired and programmed not just to manage but to maintain the pack and family situations. It's in our DNA not to go out and spread seed but to keep a cohesive unit. Right? So we were the gatherers and the nurturers. And so it's our inclination to hold on tighter to relationships that are failing to try to get them to work.
Without question, when there's kids involved, unless someone's mentally ill within the relationship, both parties need to take care of those kids.
Right.
And that can look different, but they have to, you just have
up.
to, unless someone is mentally ill.
Yeah.
You just do. That's a different kind of scenario, and it's critical.
That's another conversation.
And it's critical. It's critical. And I see over and over women get left holding the bag, I'll have to say. And I can be sexist for sure, but I see, women literally like, well, this is falling, most of this is falling on me. Here I am.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, that's the burden of single mothers or even single fathers. I mean, that they get left after trying to pick up the pieces of a relationship that you've brought children into the world. And that's a very complicated and different conversation altogether. But I think one of the things about going back to men hunting women, both outside and inside the relationship, and then these dating apps and like all the different options available, the pressures on women today I just saw a video yesterday and it was an actress who was giving all these different examples of how women have to, be pretty but not too pretty and, be sexy but not too sexy and, you're a slut, you're not sexy enough. I mean, it's just like all these expectations that women either put on themselves because we think that men want that, or the ones that men sort of bounce back and forth. There's no concrete sort of guidelines for women to look at of what men are looking for. I don't think men even know they just sort of like what they see when they see it, and it makes everything even more fluid and complicated, which goes back to learning to communicate effectively, I guess. But the whole easily accessible thing, and getting into cheating and all of that stuff. I mean, it's just this huge thing to wrap your mind around.
How do you find a man that's exciting, adventurous, a go-getter, a hunter, that also is loyal on a level that you want him to be loyal, right? Yeah. It could be okay that he flirts a little bit and fine, you know, or for some people it's more. But at the same time, you want this. If it's going to be a committed relationship, it's a committed relationship, and there's a loyalty there. How do you find someone that's dynamic in that way, but at the same time
who fits your boundaries?
Fits your boundaries. Fits your boundaries.
Because there are some women who
somewhat of a fluid kind of thing.
There's someone who can tolerate certain behaviors and who will because they recognize that a large part of the relationship is good, and worth saving. And they're like, okay, well, he'll always come back, or I know that he's out flirting or doing this, and that's fine. But I know where his loyalties are in the end, right? I think that has a lot to do with how secure the woman is within herself and how much she trusts him. I think we talked about this the other day, you and I did, about boundaries and where your boundaries are. Does their behavior humiliate you? Is that the boundary where you stop things?
Another piece too, and I know this may sound somewhat unfair, but I do see it a lot. Is I'll just my wife really takes care of herself, and she just stays beautiful. You know, what she wears and her hair and everything. She just really stays attractive. And, you know, I think men are visual. Much, you know, can be very visual, and it's also, you know, just making sure you're doing your job with that as well.
Yeah.
You know, staying attractive. I've just seen a lot of women give up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, what do you think he's gonna? You know, he's just not. You know.
Well, I think then you get into like having kids and all of that stuff, and it's like, well,
Life gets in the way.
Exactly. So bringing back sort of the, you know, self-love is a huge topic right now, that women are sort of revitalizing themselves now with self-love, and it's sort of identifying what kind of self-love you need to re-engage your partner, I guess, as well. And having that conversation, hey, honey, what can I do to re-engage you? What can I do to better myself, or to get to where, you know, we used to be when you were first attracted to me? I think those conversations absolutely have to be had with your, you know, with your partner. I think that's super
Yeah,
important.
I mean, just little things like filling the bathtub up full of chocolate, you know.
Little things, right?
Awesome.
Oh, awesome. Thanks
Cheers.
again, John, for coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.